Now, finally, India has successfully set a record by launching 104 satellites into orbit at the same time.
2, 1, 0, plus 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, the rocket carrying them took off from the southern spaceport of Saharikota. It held a 714-kilogram satellite and 103 nano-satellites. Among their uses, the satellites will monitor roads and create maps for water distribution. Most of them are owned by the United States. Russia held the previous record by launching 37 satellites in 2014. Well, for more on this, TRT World's science reporter Surav Roy joins us now in the studio. It's quite a sizable jump from that Russian number to this latest launch by India. What does this mean for the Indian Space Agency?
It is indeed a huge accomplishment. But in terms of science, it is not just taking up 103 or 104 satellites up into space. It's also successfully deploying them in orbit, which means a lot of complicated math and a lot of complicated physics into it. And that by itself is a huge accomplishment, to have 103 satellites being deployed in formation, such that all of them, as you rightly said, are nanosatellites. All of them are flying together in a formation in unique orbits. That by itself is a huge accomplishment. The Indians are not looking at setting record. They're looking at maximizing their capacity, which means that they're looking at pushing the next frontier. What could be the next frontier for them?
And what could be the next frontier for them? What are they looking at?
Well, they've already sent the world's cheapest yet the most successful Mars mission, known as Mangalyaan. They've sent a very successful mission to the moon called as Mangalyaan. They're now looking at trying out the GSLV, the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, in the months to come. They're looking at sending more missions to Mars, to Moon, as well as to Jupiter and Saturn as well. And if one has to go by what the space agency ISRO says, the Indian Space Agency, they're looking at one launch a month. Now that means a huge amount of science and technology, research and development taking place within the agency.
And just how big an achievement is this? We've touched on the figures. Why exactly are they spending so much money, putting so much effort into this?
Because it's, like I said earlier, it's not about the money. It's testing your capacity versus your knowledge of science. Now, we all know that there are many space nations who have the ability to send rockets as well as satellites into space. But ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, is by far the most successful space agency, given the fact that it hasn't had any major or any massive failures in the last 10 years. It has had some of its accomplishments, some of them minor, some of them major, but yeah, this is a huge accomplishment for them in the long run.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Surav Roy, thank you very much as always.
Let's think about this a little bit more. Okay, let's get to the top. You know, let's get to the topic. The three boys in the toy for this. We all just want to talk about India breaking this, what, about 3 hours ago, not even that maybe, breaking this world record, 104 satellites in one shot. Really, this agency is becoming a very serious player in the race. Well, look, if we've seen anything that's come out of India over the last decade, 2 decades, it's innovation. We've seen it aggressively happen in tech markets, in other businesses, and this is another area that India is looking to lead on globally. Yes, it's broken the record, which I think the Russians held from 2012. 104, as you say, Aaron, satellites on this one rocket. Now, you know, the size of these things has changed drastically over the years. Great capability. 96 of them are from the US. Okay, so they're dealing with international markets here. But the question is, it's about capability. Now, we here in the UK are also building a great capability in satellite construction. We have a satellite catapult that the government funds, really world leading in terms of how we develop technology here. The Indians are trying to beat, play the race, the satellite space race, I think. And they do it very, they can do it for very, very cheaply. But I've had lots of tweets this morning. A question you mentioned about the UK doing this. So here's the question. India has a space program. India has nuclear weapons. A third of Indians live on less than $1 a day. But if they've got a space program, they've got a nuclear program, should the likes of UK, Australia be giving India aid? You've got about 30 seconds. Right. Well, the question isn't about where should the money be spent. Even in the UK, as we spend in the satellite industry, we have questions about should that money go into the NHS? Should it go into welfare reform? Should it go into other factors? I think the Indian government is looking at investing in innovation that will deliver for its economy and help that vast population to raise its standard of living. It's a macro conversation about policy and politics and where you place your bets. But
But I think, you know, good on the Indians for doing it.
Okay.
There are other countries also trying to achieve it as well.
Corvia Ranger, thank you very much indeed for talking to Aaron Hesselhoff. I know, I'm sorry, I had to get that question in.